Very excited today because I happen to be at Mr. John Assaraf's house. So thank you very much for welcoming me to your home.
It's great to have you here.
Now, many of you will recognise John from the movie The Secret and lots of other areas in personal development. And John, you have been not just applying, you've been doing that for far longer, but really studying the science behind visualization, why it's so powerful and why it works for over a decade now. Now, you have a very famous story with regard to the power of your manifesting abilities, and we're actually sitting here at your house, which is a big part of it. Why don't you just recap for everybody exactly that story for you, how you achieved that?
Well, since 1980, I've been writing goals on paper. I've been laminating them when I can, so I can have goals for my health and wealth and relationships and money and charity and contribution. And then in the early 90s, I was introduced to creating vision boards. I used to cut out pictures of cars, homes, watches, charities, girls, money, everything that I wanted to achieve in health, wealth, relationships, career, business, spirituality, contribution. And I would just look at those every day for just a few minutes. And I would just look at my goals and look at the image, and look at my goals and look at the image, and look at my goals and read them. And what I also used to do was look at them while I was listening to them while I was looking at the picture. So I created some different processes for me just to be able to really feel, what that would be like. And so back in 1995, I started to really do that process. And I used to sit for 2 to 3 minutes a day and just do that little exercise of really feeling the goals, acting as if those things were mine, that was my life. And I acted like a Hollywood actor would assume a role that he or she was going to act to win an Academy Award. That's how I pretended.
Yeah.
And what I didn't know was what I was actually doing neurologically at the time. Mm-hmm. And so what happened is I did that for several years, and I was living in Indianapolis, Indiana at the time. And we were going to move to Vancouver, British Columbia, and then we put all of our stuff in storage. Okay. And then when I moved to San Diego, and we bought the home that we're sitting in right now, I called the United Van Lines and said, hey, bring all my furniture to San Diego. And all the furniture was brought, and all the boxes were laid out around the house. And one morning, just up the way there in my home office, the boxes that the movers had brought in the day before were laying against the ledge of my home office. And my son, who was 5.5 at the time, he'll actually be 15 here shortly, so 10 years ago basically, came in and sat on the boxes and asked me, he was banging on the boxes with his feet. He asked me, Daddy, what's in the boxes? So we got a scissors, we cut the tape from around the boxes, tore the top of the box off, pulled out the first board. They're about that big and about that high. And on them were the different pictures of things that I wanted to achieve. And the first board had a nice car on it that I had bought, and then some trips and stuff like that. And so I started to explain to him the power of creating a vision, and the power of looking at it, and the power of seeing it, and the power of feeling it. And then as I pulled out the second board, at first I was stunned because something unique happened. And in the middle of the board is a picture, actually 2 pictures of a home. And I didn't know at first how in the world did this picture get into the board, because these boxes have been sealed for years, for 3 years. And at that moment, something really unique happened to me. I had an epiphany. I had an epiphany, I call it, of biblical proportions, because on the board was a picture of this house. So not a house like it, a picture of the house that I'm living in right now and that I was living in 10 years ago.
Actually, this shot with the pool.
Well,
exactly.
it was a different, from that angle over there. But what had happened is first I was in shock, and then I was, oh my God, I was so elated because all of the disciplines that I'd done over the years of affirmations and visualization and meditation and creating my own, vision board, it all came together. Because I'd studied quantum physics and the power of our thoughts. I'd studied the neuroscience field for a little bit, but not to the extent of what I was about to do for the last 10 years. But this picture just brought everything into place for me. And I asked myself a couple of questions. Number one was, is this happening all the time in our lives? And as tears rolled down my face, Keenan said to me, he says, Dad, why are you crying? And I said to him, sweetheart, I think I finally understand how we manifest okay, and how we create and how we achieve our goals or not achieve our goals. And he really didn't understand, but I became very, very, very elated, number one. The first person I called was my friend Bob Proctor. I said, Bob, you're not going to believe this. And I called him up. He says, you have to write this story down so that we can, share it. And so I wrote the story down and I sent it to him, and he was like, wow.
Yeah.
And because, what do you think of, I was living in Toronto and Montreal and Vancouver and LA before. I never even thought I'd be in Rancho Santa Fe, California.
And you've never actually been here when you selected those photos?
Never
you just found them on the net somewhere?
Well, actually, I found it in Dream Homes magazine. I cut it out of Dream Homes magazine, and all I thought to myself was one day when I could live anywhere I want, no matter what city, what state, what country it is in, and I could buy any house I want. It'll look like that. I never ever said that I will live in that house. Mm-hmm. All I felt and experienced was one day I'll buy a house like that, because I like ultra-modern, and I just like the look of it. Mm-hmm. And so everything that occurred, from that moment on was really a miracle in the fact that there are scientific explanations to what happened. And one thing I do know for certain is that there are no accidents and there are no coincidences. But there's a lot of mystery around the science behind it. And today, scientists are trying to prove what theologians and spiritual masters and teachers have said all along. And we're seeing a really beautiful convergence of science and spirituality.
So you've had a very personal experience with visualization, which is awesome, and that led you onto a journey, which was studying the science and the mechanics of why visualization and that works. You touched on it a little bit. Would you go into a little bit more detail about why visualization works and how it affects every single person?
It's the repetitiveness of visualization with the associated emotion that works. And so it's just like words. Words on their own really don't work unless there's meaning and emotion behind it. Mm-hmm. And so if I called you a name, okay, if it didn't have the inflection of emotion behind it, it may not have the power. Mm-hmm. And so from a visualization perspective, if it's true that our brains are using the majority of the brain for visual processing, then it would also mean that if we want to ingrain an image in our brain, then emotionalizing it creates an association to the vision. And then if we repeat that over and over and over again, then we're going to create something known as a neural network or a software program of that image. And if we create that software program of that image with an emotion behind it, then what we're doing is firing the neurons, the brain cells, in the same sequence over and over and over again. And as we visualize, what we're doing is firing those neuron sequences over and over again, and we actually reduce the threshold of those neurons firing. Now, that's a scientific way of saying that the more we do something, the easier it is for us to do. And the easier it is for us to do, the more your brain will do it, because it becomes addicted to the emotion of the repetition.
Right. Okay, so the formula is visualization plus emotion times by repetition.
You got it.
Is the formula. Yeah. Now that explains to me why we want to and move in a direction that we move into, and why we're drawn in certain directions. Right. What I'm still learning is what's the flip side of that, in that, so you'd never been to Rancho Santa Fe. You didn't know that this house existed. You didn't know your house was there. How did the universe conform to deliver you in this space, even though you personally had never experienced that this was here or knew that you had to be here?
Right.
How does that work?
Well, we're dealing with a highly intelligent, self-aware universe. If you think about what's going on here, if you think about, the planets moving around the sun moving in its orbit around black holes, if you think about the protons and electrons and quarks, everything is working in perfect order and harmony in an intelligent universe that responds not to our thinking, not to our words, but responds to emotion. Responds to emotion. And so if I was feeling and acting as if, this home was already mine, the lifestyle that I live is already mine, the universe is going to match and mirror that emotion. All we're seeing in this physical world of ours is a reflection of what's happening in the brain. if you think about what the brain does, the brain keeps you alive, and the other thing that it does better than anything else is to make sure that your outside world, the physical world, is an absolute mirror image of your internal world. So one of the great examples I love to use, imagine if you're sitting in the movie theater and you're watching a movie. And on the screen, you're not enjoying what you're watching. So imagine getting up and going up to the screen and tearing up the screen or spray painting the screen, hoping that the movie's going to stop. Well, that doesn't make any sense, because what we're seeing on the screen is nothing more than a reflection of what's being projected from the DVD up in the projector room or the reel. And so if you don't like what you're seeing, what you're experiencing, change the reel.
Yeah,
Right? So our brain is making sure that 100% of our experience in life matches up our physical world with our internal world. And as soon as you can get the picture to match in here, that's when you start to see it in the physical world. That's when you start to attract the people. That's when you start to read the books, find the CDs, the DVDs, the mentors, the teachers. But more importantly, that's when you start to behave differently. Because your behavior is all based on how the implicit memory system works, not the explicit memory system. And those gets a little bit deeper in that, but our implicit memory system is our subconscious mind. It's where our memories and habits are.
Gotcha.
And so we want to make sure that, when we visualize, that we are doing the repetition with emotion, and that is what creates the neural networks in the brain. Once the neural networks are created, that's your movie, and then the movie has to be played out in the physical world. That's why athletes close their eyes and they visualize and they feel going through their motions over and over and over again. That's why NASA used the exact same visualization techniques to have their astronauts go through every sequence, every movement, every motion with their eyes closed, so that they would be able to perform any of the sequences in pitch dark blackness. And one of the things that the reason for that is it's not the eyes that see. I'm going to repeat that. It's not your eyes that see. It's your brain that sees. Right? And so eyes just let light in. Right? And your brain deciphers what that information is. So if you closed your eyes and you created a sequence for the car that you're driving, the home that you want to live in, the body that you want to have, the money you want to give to charities, you can create that image in your mind, that movie in your mind. And the clearer it is in your mind, you could take the behaviors without having the ability to see.
So that's very congruent with what my experience is with visualization, and I would love to be able to say that I knew lots about it and it was carefully planned and worked out, and I created a system. It wasn't the case at all. I created, I started off with a vision board, and I thought this is cool, having some pictures, right? And I thought, but I need to make this cool, to really invest my emotions into it and really build me up and get me excited about it.
See, I'm almost 50. You're how old?
32.
See, that's the advantage of technology today. The young ones take our best ideas and guess what they do? Make it better. And I hate that he did that. But that's why we're together now.
And so, yes, I made a movie about what I wanted my life to look like. And what blew me away was the speed with which my life had turned around. I was in a job that I hated, getting up early, I'm talking like pre-dawn, going to this job, working in the factory, packing boxes, hating it, coming home, but I made this movie that I wanted to be financially free. And I went from a position where I was over $70,000 in debt, and that's just not, but I also had a mortgage as well. That's just the bad debt, like credit cards and personal loans and all that kind of nightmare. And I went to this situation where within 3 months, I was completely financially free, which is exactly what I made my movie about. And within 6 months, I started my lifestyle of living an endless summer. 6 months in Sydney, 6 months in America. And all that turned around so incredibly quickly. And without knowing why, I mean, and with all the information and testimonials we receive from our clients at Mind Movies, I know there's something powerful in Mind Movies. And I've shared with you, and I've shared something what we're going to be releasing in the next couple of weeks, actually, with you just the other day. We'll talk about that in a minute. But can you explain why Mind Movies is such a powerful tool in visualization?
Absolutely. Think about, the way we interact with our universe. If it is a highly interactive, self-aware universe, which it is, then it's responding to us all the time. The one thing that we know about the universe is it loves speed. Everything in nature works by absolute law and works in the fastest way possible. Nature does what she does maximally efficiently, on time, every time, no exceptions. Period. So if we know that nature works in an orderly fashion, and nature's first law is order, and nature responds to our clarity of mind or our dissipation of focus, when we have a great image, a visual of what we want to achieve, that is the collaboration between us and the universal intelligence. I've always asked myself, is it me who has the thought, or is it the universe that's impregnating me with that thought as it's impregnating many, many other people with that same idea, same image? And I actually think it's the latter. I think that the universe is using us as the co-creator on this physical plane called, our little beautiful blue planet or solar system. And so the reason I believe that the mind movies work and is because of the clarity, is by deciding specifically, precisely, and exactly what it is you want. Not what it is you think you can have, what it is you kind of sort of want, but no, that's it. That's the car, that's the lover, that's the money, that's the trip, that's the charity. And when you get that specific, I think the universe responds, and then when you repeat that over and over and over again, there's another part of the brain called the reticular activation system, which is a network of cells in the back of the brain above this thing called the occipital lobe, that is getting information from the universe or from our physical world at the rate of 400 billion bits of information per second. And it deletes or distorts anything that doesn't match up with what you are focusing on that's high on your important list. So if you've got a mind movie that is exactly what it is that you want, and you watch it over and over again, and you feel it, guess what you're giving your brain an instruction to do? Find me more of that. Find me the tools, the resources, the people, everything that I need that matches with that image that I've got on my mind movie. Your brain gets a perfect picture of it, and a couple things happen. Number one, you start to vibrate. Every cell of your body starts to vibrate in resonance with that image, that movie. You start to think more about it. You start to ask different questions than you asked before. Once you really get emotionally associated with it, you say, well, how could I have that car? How could I make more money? How could I release the weight that I don't want anymore? How could I find the lover of my dreams and the soulmate of my dreams? How could I really contribute to the charities that I want to contribute to? You start to think differently, but more importantly than that even, is your perception starts to change, because your brain now starts to look for things that match in the physical world with the image that you're now impressing upon it day in and day out, week in and week out. See, if you just have a mind movie that you watch for once or twice or three times, that's like, not worth it. Don't even do it. But if you really get involved and watch it every day, for a month, 2 months, 3 months, and you really associate with that, and you will figure out how, because you're a genius. Every human being, every one of you, every single one of you is a genius and has genius capabilities, right? So what we want to really understand is there's a sequence of how you do it, and that's really the fun part. And I love the fact you guys created some mind movies. I'm telling you, I wish I would have created them myself. And now I get to experience what you guys have created. And
something that I felt, and it rang true to me when you were explaining your formula at the beginning: visualization, emotion, repetition. Visualization movie, obviously right there. The emotion. What I really found different, there was the leap for me that went from when I was watching a vision board to going to a mind movie, is the music being attached to it. Because the music really drives in the emotions for me. It energizes me and lifts me up to it. It was visualization.
So the thing about what you just said, it energizes me.
Yes.
Emotion.
Yeah.
Emotion. You get that feeling, right? Emotion is feeling.
Yep.
Right? And so you're 100% right. And remember what I said earlier, is the associations between the feeling, the emotion, and the vision. You're creating a very strong neural network in the brain. And that's
anytime I hear any little note, sound that matches that, instantly I'm in a happy state and thinking about the mind movie. John, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Guys, thank you very much for joining us. I have to say it's one of the most enjoyable videos I've ever made. It's not every day you get to speak with probably arguably the authority on visualization. And so I just want to very much appreciate you. Thank you for your time. Take care.